Hilchos Taaniyos Perek Chamishi, the laws of fasts, chapter 5, the final chapter. Today we're concluding the laws of Taaniyot. And while the last couple of days we spoke about what's called Tzarot Shel Tzibur, communal troubles, which were reason for the court to enact fasts, the Rambam today is going to talk about what we know as public fast days. The fact that on certain calendar dates, to recall certain events, we fast every year. No matter if that year there's a trouble, because it's a date on which a great troubling event happened for the Jewish people, so we fast as a community. Says the Rambam Halacha Aleph, Yesh Sham Yamim. There are certain days, Shekol Yisrael Mis'anim Bahem, that all Jews fast on those days, Mipnei Atzaros She'eru Bahem, because of the troubles that happened on those days to the Jewish people as a whole. Kedei Lo'orer Halavavos Liftoyach Darchei HaTshuva. And these fasts also are to arouse, awaken the hearts, and to open the ways of Teshuvah. The same way in the beginning of these halachot, the Rambam said that every time we make a fast day, it's because this way we don't end up treating the world as a coincidence. We understand that Hashem is sending us a message to open up our hearts to Teshuvah. These public fast days that happen every year are also there to open up our hearts to Teshuvah. And by fasting on those days, it's going to be a memory, it's going to awaken memories for our own bad deeds, as well as recalling our ancestors' actions, which are like our actions now, to the point that us and them had to suffer these troubles. The Rambam says just by remembering these things, it's already an impetus to do tshuva, to improve our deeds. Shenemar, as it says, in the Tochacha, the part of the Torah that discusses the rebuke, all the punishments that happen to the Jewish people if they don't follow the Torah, at the end it says that the children are going to confess for their own sins and for the sins of their fathers. So here you see that sometimes it's good to remember both your actions and your ancestors' actions, which is these public fast days are a great day for that. What are the public fast days? So the Rambam says, Ve'eluhein, they are the following. And here in this halacha, he goes in order of the year. Yom Shlishi b'Tishrei, the third day of the month of Tishrei, the day after Rosh Hashanah. What happened on the third day of the month of Tishrei? Shabai Neherag Gedalia ben Achikam, a famous Jew, a famous Jewish leader. Gedalia, son of Achikam, was killed. After the destruction of the temple, after everything, Yirmiyahu, the prophet Yirmiyahu writes that Hashem appointed this leader, Gedalia, to lead the Jewish people in this time of distress and disaster, and then he was murdered. And so when he was murdered, that was like the final blow. The Rambam says, "V'nichbas gacheles Yisrael hanisheres." Whatever embers of the coal of the Jewish people remained was now extinguished. The sibev lahasim galusan, and it caused their exile to become complete. That's the first one in the year, even though it happened after the events of all the other fasts we're about to mention. Ba'asiri b'teves, the 10th of Teves is the next fast. Shabai samach melech Bavel Nebuchadnezzar harasha al Yerushalayim. That was when the king of Babylon, the wicked Nebuchadnezzar, approached. Samach, he came close to Jerusalem. And he brought it into a siege and into a very, very tough situation. The Rebbe, always found the positive spin. He says, why does it say Samach? In Hebrew, there's many ways to say siege. Samach means support. It sounds like the king of Babylon supported Jerusalem. So the Rebbe says, here we see a hint that on the innermost level, b'pnimiyut, it was a good thing. Because what's a siege? A siege forces everybody to come together, right? Siege means you have a trap around the city. Nobody can come in, nobody can come out. Everybody that's here is united as one. And so that was like what's called hakdamat refuah lemakah. Hashem is putting the cure before the disease. The disease is going to be the churban, which came through sinas chinam, baseless hatred, separation. Nebuchadnezzar forced them into a siege, forced them to face themselves and each other and engage in Ahavat Yisrael. So in this way, Samach, he supported Jerusalem because he helped them become greater and kind of supported them in their journey into the exile. That's why the Rambam also changes the language. In the verse it says, Samach belech Bavel el Yerushalayim. He came close to Jerusalem. The Rambam writes, al Yerushalayim, over. Because the word over also can mean above. He helped, unknowingly, he helped Jerusalem rise above their prior situation by putting them in a siege. In the moment it was a bad thing, but b'pnimiyut it brought about a good thing. That's the second public fast. The third public fast, V'shiva Asar b'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz in the summertime. Actually, this is a public fast day, not just for one reason, but for multiple reasons. Chamisha dvarim erubai, 5 things happened on this day. First of all, nishtabru haluchos. It was the day that the luchot were broken. Moshe Rabbeinu came down the mountain for the first time, holding the first set of luchot. He finds the Jews serving the golden calf. What does he do? He breaks them. That was the 17th of Tammuz. Ubatal hatamid mibayis rishon. In the times of the first temple, this was the day that they stopped bringing the daily sacrifice. They made a siege. Yerushalayim was blocked up. Then it was broken into, according to most traditions, on Tet Tammuz, the 9th of Tammuz. And then a couple of days later, there were no more animals being brought into the temple. They didn't allow it. And so the Jews were forced to stop bringing the daily sacrifice. That was a very, very sad event. The Havka Yerushalayim b'churban sheni. Jerusalem was broken into on the second round of the Churban. That was when the wall came down. So I misspoke before. The breakage happened in the first temple on the 9th of Tammuz. Second, it happened on the 17th of Tammuz. The Saraf Apoistamais Harasha Satira. Apoistamais Harasha, who was one of the generals, of the Roman generals, he burnt publicly a Torah scroll on this day. The Hem Mitzalam Bahechal, and he also erected an idol in the temple as a form of embarrassment to the Jewish people. All this happened on the 17th of Tammuz. And so we fast today for all of these reasons. And then, of course, we have the saddest day on the Jewish calendar, the fourth fast day, Tisha B'av. Chamisha Dvarim Erubay. On Tisha B'av, the 9th of Av, 5 things also negative happened in Jewish history. Number 1, Nigzar al Yisrael Bamidbar, Shalo Yikansu La'aretz. That was the day that the Jewish people found out they're not going into Israel. The spies, tragic story where they came up with a negative report, everybody started crying, and Hashem said, you're crying today, I'm going to make you cry forever on this day. That's when he told them, it was this day of Tisha B'av, you're not going into Israel, you're going to stay here 40 years, and you're all going to die. V'charav habayis barishoina uvashniya. First and second temples were destroyed on this day. Already back then, the Goyim knew how to make the Jews trouble by embarrassing them further and paining them further on a day that was already painful. First Churban happened in Tisha B'av, second one also. V'nilkeda ir gedayla uBeitar shma. There was a big city called Beitar that was conquered on this day. It was a tragic event. There were thousands, myriads, tens of thousands of Jews living there. They had a great king, Bar Kochba. He was so great to the point that all the Jewish people and some of the great sages also believed that he was the Messiah, he was Mashiach. Yeah, that was him. Exactly. Rabbi Akiva was one of the sages that thought he was Moshiach. And then this king fell into the hands of the Romans, and everybody was killed. It was such a great trouble, equal to the destruction of the temple. And on this day, which is basically prepared ever since the beginning of history for punishment, Turnus the wicked, literally plowed the area of the Holy Temple and its environs and its surrounding, L'kayim Hashanemar, to fulfill the verse that says, Tzion Sada Techaresh, Zion will be plowed as a field is plowed. And of course, over history, after the Rambam's times, many of our oppressors, non-Jewish oppressors, made it a point to inflict pain on Tisha B'av. The expulsion from Spain happened on Tisha B'av. The Germans, Yimach Shemam V'zichram, would do terrible things during the Holocaust, specifically on Tisha B'av, because they knew that this is a day of Jewish pain. It says that Rambam Halacha Daled ve'arba yimei hatzoyim esa'ilu harehein mefurashin beKabbalah. As a matter of fact, observing these 4 fast days is actually clear in the prophets. This is a verse in Zechariah. It's actually a positive verse. It talks about how when Moshiach comes, the fast days are going to turn into holidays. And we're going to bring up this verse again in the end of today's chapter. But let's hear how he describes the fasts. It says, Tzoyim haravi v'tzoyim hachamishi v'goymer. The fast of the 4th month, the fast of the 5th month, etc. If you look on the screen, you can see Kol Amar Hashem Tzvaot, Tzoyim haravi v'tzoyim hachamishi v'tzoyim hashvi v'tzoyim ha'asiri. The fast in the 4th month, the 5th month, the 7th month, and the 10th month. If we count from Nisan in Torah, we begin from Nisan. So Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, that's the 4th month. That's Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. Tzoyim haravi, Zeh Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, Shu B'Chedesh haravi, the Rambam says. The fast of the 4th month is the 17th of Tammuz. It's in the 4th month. The Tzoyim HaChamishi is at Tisha B'av, Shu B'Chedesh HaChamishi. The fast of the 5th month, that's the next month, Av. That's Tisha B'av in the 5th month. The Tzoyim HaShvi, Zeh Shleisha B'Tishrei, Shehu B'Chedesh HaShvi. The fast in the 7th month is the 3rd of Tishrei, Tzoyim Gedalia, in the 7th month. Tishrei is the 7th month from Nisan. V'tzoyim ha'asiri, zeh asara b'teves, shu b'chedesh ha'asiri. And the fast in the 10th month is the 10th of Teves, which is in the 10th month of the year, if you count again from Nisan. Now, we know that we also fast publicly on another day of the calendar, and that is Ta'anit Esther, the day before Purim. Now, that's not in the prophets, and neither is it necessarily commemorating a trouble that happened to the entire Jewish community. What does the Rambam says? Hey, v'noagu kol Yisrael bizmanim elu. These times, all the Jewish people have a custom lihis anais bishleisha asar ba'adar, to fast also on the 13th day of the month of Adar. Zeicher latainis sheisanu b'mei Haman, to remember the fast which the Jewish people fasted in the days of Haman, of him and the wicked. Sheremar, as it says, divrei hatzoymais v'za'akasam, the words of the fasts and their cries. In other words, part of the record that Queen Esther kept of Purim's story was also mentioning the fasts and the crying. So we also fast to remember the fasting. In other words, all the other fastings we fast to remember the trouble. Here we fast to commemorate the fasting. By the way, the first line of this halacha, other texts read, "V'nahagu kol Yisrael bizmanim elu lihis anos kama." All Jews have the custom to fast in these times, meaning the last 4 fasts, bishleisha asar ba'adar, as well as on. There's an extra vav there. But the point is, either way, that Rambam is telling us there's another fast day, which is the fast of Esther on the 13th of Adar. The Rambam gives the reason to commemorate the fast that they fasted. Other people say because the 13th of Adar was the day that the Jewish people fought the war. That was the day that Haman had originally intended for all Jews to be annihilated. And they got permission from Achashverosh to fight the war on that day. So during war, soldiers are not allowed to fast. Since all the Jewish people were fighting, who was the only Jew who was able to fast on that day to arouse divine mercy? Was Esther, because she was the only one in the palace still married to Achashverosh, so she fasted on this day. Some people say that's why it's called Ta'anit Esther, because she was the only one who fasted on this specific day of the 13th of Adar. But the classic reason, as the Rambam says, is to remember the fast that we fasted in those times, even though it wasn't on the 13th of Adar itself. If the 13th of Adar falls out to be on Shabbos, as does happen many years, Purim is on Sunday, the day before is Shabbat, makdimin umisanin b'chamishi shehu achad asar. We move it back, and we fast on Thursday, the 11th day of Adar. But if any of the other 4 fasts fall out to be on Shabbat, we don't move it back, we move it forward. So if Tzom Gedalia falls out on Shabbat, that happens all the time. If Rosh Hashanah is on Thursday and Friday, 3rd day of Tishrei is Shabbat, we fast on Sunday, the 4th of Tishrei. Right. Same thing with Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'av. If they're on Shabbos, they're both on Shabbos in the same year, we move them both to Sunday. Asara B'Tevet, the Rambam here implies that it's able to come out on Shabbat, but we know in today's calendar it's impossible. Asara B'Tevet can never fall out on Shabbat, but apparently in those times, if it did fall out on Shabbat, then you would push it off to after Shabbat. Choli is Be'erev Shabbos, Misanin Be'erev Shabbos. But if it falls on Friday, that's not a reason to delay or to push it back. We fast on Friday, and you just go into Shabbat, fasting, you make Kiddush, that's the way you break your fast. This happens only actually on Asara B'Tevet. It's the only fast that can fall out nowadays on Friday, and we do break our fast with Kiddush. It's kind of funny when that happens. On all these fast days, they're not treated like communal fasts over trouble. So we don't blow trumpets, we don't daven the extra prayer of Ne'ilah. Rather, the only thing we do is we have an extra Torah reading, the portion of Vayechal Moshe when Moshe achieved forgiveness for the golden calf. All of these fasts you're allowed to eat the night before. They're only day fasts. Chutz mi Tisha B'av, except for Tisha B'av, which is treated like Yom Kippur, to 24-hour fast. Vav, talking about Tisha B'av, not just Tisha B'av is a fast day. Because it's such a sad day, we begin to act in ways of mourning before Tisha B'av even arrives. Halacha Vav mishi yikonis av mematin b'simcha. The moment the month of Av enters, we lessen in our joy. We do things that are joyful less. The Rebbe would translate this in more of a positive sense. Mishi kanes av mematin. We lessen the troubles b'simcha, through joy. By adding in joy, we lessen our troubles. But halachically, of course, dryly, joyful acts that we usually do during the year, we don't do during these 9 days from Rosh Chodesh Av till Tisha B'av. Not only the 9 days, but it gets stricter. The Shabbos shechol Tisha B'av liyas b'seicha. The week in which Tisha B'av falls out is even more strict. So here you can see a calendar. Let's say this is the month of Av. If Aleph Av, Rosh Chodesh, is on a Wednesday, so already from here, we're lessening in our acts of joy. But then you have Shabbat, and here begins the week of Tisha B'av. This week is treated with even more stringency. What kind of stringency? Asur l'saper, you can't even take haircuts. Ulechabes, you can't do laundry. You cannot wear ironed clothing, even if it's linen, which needs a lot of pressing. You cannot wear it. Ad sheyavar Taaniyos till the fast passes. Even to do laundry, to leave clothing for after the fast is also forbidden. No laundry is permitted during this week. Now, by the way, this is the minhag Sfaradim, that the week of Tisha B'av is the strict week. According to Ashkenazim, everything begins to apply from the beginning of the 9 days. So we just begin from here, boom, we go all the way to the 9th of Av. We don't do laundry, we don't take haircuts, none of it. But according to the Rambam, definitely from here, the week of Tisha B'av is when all these stringencies begin. Ukvar noagu Yisrael, also Jewish people have already become accustomed. Shalei lechol basar b'Shabbazu. We don't eat meat during this week. V'lo yikonsu lamerchatz. We don't go into the bathhouse to take a bath. Ad sheyavar Taaniyos till the fast is over. V'yesh mekayim shenohagu levatel hashchita me'rosh hachodesh ad Taaniyos. Some places have a custom that we don't slaughter any animals already from Rosh Chodesh, the new month, till after the fast. Zayin Tisha B'av, the actual fast of Tisha B'av, Leiloi ki yoimai lechol davar. The night of Tisha B'av is treated as stringently as the day of Tisha B'av in every matter. You can only eat the day before while it's still day. The twilight zone after sunset before nightfall is also forbidden to eat, like Yom Kippur. Even the meal before Tisha B'av, the last meal which you stop eating with, you also shouldn't have meat or wine. It shouldn't be a celebratory meal at this meal. You could eat wine if it's just out of the press, within 3 days or less. So it isn't so sweet, it isn't so pleasurable. You can also eat meat that has been salted and is over 3 days old or more. So the salt depreciates the taste and it isn't so good. You also shouldn't eat 2 cooked dishes because that makes the meal considered important. You only have one dish. Today, the custom is we have a very, very, very small meal. We eat bread, dip it in ashes with a hard-boiled egg. It's kind of like a meal of mourning. Says the Rambam, when are we talking about that this last meal should be treated as a very non-important meal and not treated so fancily? If you already ate a fuller meal earlier in the afternoon, after midday. But if you only ate breakfast before noon, even though that's your final meal, as long as the meal is taking place before midday, you can eat whatever you want in that meal. It's only the evening that becomes the sad time. The Erev Tisha B'av Shacharis b'Shabbos. But if the day before Tisha B'av comes out on Shabbat, as does happen many times even nowadays, because it's Shabbos, all the mourning is cancelled. You eat and drink whatever you need. You put on your table even a meal as large as Solomon's meal. King Shlomo HaMelech, he had a huge meal every day. So it's an expression, you could have whatever you want on your table. If Tisha B'av itself comes out on Shabbat, as does happen many years, you lack nothing. It's the one day that we actually feast on Tisha B'av. When it falls on Shabbos, we're literally converting. It's like we're living a mini Moshiach experience. When Moshiach comes, Tisha B'av is going to be transformed. We're already transforming it. Of course, we fast the next day in that case. But on Tisha B'av, we're eating and drinking like kings. Tes. Zuhi midas kol ha'am she'enon yechelim lisbol yeser midai. What I just said is the way of behavior for most of the people who can't handle too much pain. So we tell them the last meal, just treat it a little bit less, don't have so much food, don't have meat, don't have wine. Aval chasidim arishainim. But the chasidim who lived in earlier generations, and they really were in touch with the power of the Churban, the power of the destruction in the morning, kach haisa midasan. This was the way they behaved. They were super mournful in terms of their behavior. Erev Tisha B'av hayamivin leila adam levada pas chareva b'melech. The person would sit alone, and the eve of Tisha B'av, they would bring him a dry piece of bread dipped in salt. V'sheira b'mayim, he would dip it in water to soak it a little bit, give it some texture. V'yeshev ben taner v'kirayim, and he would sit between an oven and a stove. In other words, just the middle of his kitchen on the floor. V'oichla, and he would eat this bread. V'sheisa aleha kitain shel mayim b'daiga uv'shimamen uv'chia. Then he would drink a little jug of water with a worried expression, with a desolate feeling, with crying. Kimisha meisei muta lefanav, as though his dead was still before him. That's what kind of mourning it was. This is how it's fitting for a wise man to behave, or something like this. That Rambam testifies. In our lifetime, we never ate a proper cooked dish on the eve of Tisha B'av, afilu shel adoshim, even lentils, a cheap food, Elohim came haya b'Shabbos, unless of course it was on Shabbat, we had a full meal. But any other day, eve of Tisha B'av, we really treated it like a mourner and didn't have anything important. Yud ubares uminikais misanes umashlimais b'Tisha B'av. Pregnant women, nursing women must fast and complete the fast on Tisha B'av. It's so strict, so severe. The asur b'rechitza ben mechamin ben mitzayne. It's also forbidden to bathe on Tisha B'av, like Yom Kippur. Hot water, cold water. Even to put your finger into water completely as a means of cleansing, forbidden. It's also forbidden to anoint yourself with creams or ointments in the way of pleasure, of course not medicinal, or to wear leather shoes, or to engage in marital relations. It's literally like Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, it's more of a way of afflicting ourselves. Here, it's more of a way of mourning. As far as work goes, if you live in a locale, if you live in a place where the custom is to do work, you can do work. But if the place's custom is not to do work, then of course you don't do work. In either situation, wherever you live, a Torah sage should definitely cancel work on Tisha B'av. The sages said, whoever does work on this day will not see a sign of blessing ever. Yud Aleph, more of the Torah sages' behavior on Tisha B'av. Talmidei Chachamim ein noisnin zeh lazeh shalom Tisha B'av. Torah sages wouldn't offer peace. They wouldn't say hi in a casual way to their friends on Tisha B'av. Elo yoshvim davim v'nei anochim ka'avelim. They would sit in agony, groaning like mourners. V'im nasan lehem am ha'aretz shalom. If a regular guy gave them peace, a regular guy came over and greeted them, ma'chazidim le b'safarafa v'kayvedreish. They would reply to him weakly with a serious expression to show that it's a sad day. The asur likres b'Tisha B'av b'Torah b'Neviim v'Ksuvim. We don't learn Torah on Tisha B'av. We don't read the Torah, the prophets, the writings of Mishnah, of Halachos, of Gemara, of Haggadot. We don't read Mishnah, we don't read Halacha, we don't read Gemara, we don't even read the Homiletics, the Aggadot in the Talmud. You only read parts of Torah that arouse sadness. Be'iyov, the story of Job, Uvekinois, the Lamentations, it's the book of Eicha, Uvadvarim harayim shebeyirmiyahu, and the bad chapters in the book of Jeremiah, the sad chapters. Even school children don't go to school on this day. They don't learn Torah. Some sages had the custom not to put the head tefillin on this day, because head tefillin is called beauty. They don't want to be beautified. Today, of course, the custom is we don't put on tefillin in the morning. We put it on in the afternoon when it's less of a sad time. Yud Beis Mishachara Beis Hamikdash. Once we're talking about Tisha B'av, the Rambam talks about now some laws that came into effect after the destruction of the temple. Always, all year round. Mishachara Beis Hamikdash. Once the temple was destroyed, Tiknu Chachamim Shahayu Ba'isei Adar. The sages at that generation said that from now on, we're changing the way Jews live in many ways. We're going to institute that as part of many Jewish ceremonies, we're going to remember the Beit Hamikdash. So, for example, She'ein Bainin La'olam Binyan Mesuyad U'Mechuyar Ki Binyan HaMelachim. We never build a building whose walls are fully decorated, fully painted as king's palaces. Elotach Beisei Betit V'Sad Besid. You can cover your house with mud, the clay that's required. You can cover it with plaster and lime. You can paint it. U'Mishayer Makim Ama Al Ama Keneged HaPesach B'Loi Sid. Directly opposite the entrance, you should leave a place that's 1 cubit by 1 cubit, about 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet, with no paint, to remember the Churban. I know people today, as they build their homes, they leave this place. Some people have this custom. You have like this is actually an unpainted wall, and it says Yerushalayim on it. So that's how they remember the Churban constantly. If you buy a courtyard from somebody else, it's already fully painted, fully decorated, you can remain as it is. You don't have to go start peeling the walls. My father-in-law said that today, when you build houses, you don't have to leave a place zecher lachurban, because when you build a house, there's going to be things that are going to be unfinished. All your life, you're going to see the corner, the unpainted. There's always problems when you build a home. It always ends up costing more than you thought. It always ends up being more a headache than you thought. So you're always going to have that zecher lechurban. You don't have to leave a spot like that. But the point is, definitely a part of it should remember the morning. Yud Gimel v'chein hiskinu. They also enacted sheha'orech shulchan la'aseh sudol ha'orchim. Anybody who sets up a table to make a meal for guests, mechaser mimenu ma'at, should diminish something from it. Don't make it a perfect table. Umaniach makom panoi b'lei kaira min ha'kairos re'uyas lasis sham. Leave an empty spot without the plate or the bowl that belongs there. When a woman makes jewelry of silver or gold, she should always leave out one piece of jewelry which she would usually wear, so that the jewelry shouldn't be complete. When a groom marries a woman, he puts ash on his head, place where the tefillin goes. We saw yesterday about this in the communal fast, and I mentioned it. Here you see a chatan. I couldn't find a picture of chatan with actual ash, but here they have a bowl. It's a bowl of actual ash. And before the chuppah, they put it onto your head. In Chabad, that's not the custom, but many Jewish communities have that custom till today. Put ash on the head. Never seen it. Yeah, it makes sense. Some communities don't do it, but many communities do. All of these things were enacted to remember Jerusalem. Shemar, as it says, of course, the famous verses in Tehillim, Im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yamini. If I forget you, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its function. Tidbak l'shayni l'chiki im le'yazkerechi. My tongue should stick to its palate if I don't remember you. Im le'ales Yerushalayim al reish simchasi. If I don't bring up the memory of Jerusalem over and above the head of my joy. In other words, the Jerusalem's churban is so important that it overtakes every joy that we have. Every joy that we experience, we're always remembering Jerusalem. At a wedding, besides for the chatan putting on the ash, we also break a glass at the end of the chuppah. Why? To remember the churban. Yudalid v'chein gazru shalei l'nagin b'chlei shir. The sages also enacted no more instruments. Originally, that's how it was. There was no more instruments allowed. All types of singing, all types of voices of song, you cannot rejoice with them, you cannot listen to them because of the churban. Originally, even to sing verbally, just with your voice, over wine is forbidden. As it says, Bashir lo yishtu yayin. With song, they don't drink wine anymore. But that custom has already been minimized. Most Jews already will sing praises to Hashem or songs of thanks over wine. It's a big controversy today how we listen to music and live music and concerts, and many rabbis discuss it. How
we don't do that
all year round? No, we do.
No, not all.
We stay away during the weeks before Tisha B'av. I know, but I'm saying this halacha was originally enacted for all year round. No more music. Out of sadness for the Churban, no more music. So different rabbis discuss how we do this today. It's part of Simcha Shel Mitzvah, it's part of arousing us to do mitzvahs, it's part of serving Hashem. It's a different kind of Simcha. But if it's just for pleasure, the Rambam says it's actually forbidden all year round. See your local Orthodox rabbi for how it's permitted today. Later on, the sages decreed on the crowns of the groom, not to put them on. Apparently, grooms on the day of the wedding, they would wear like this decorative crown. And we don't do that today. It's decorative, we don't want to do it, it's mourning for the temple. Neither should the groom put on his head any type of diadem or like little decoration, jewelry decoration. As it says, in wake of the churban, remove the turban, lift up the hats, lift up the crowns. They also decreed on decorative crowns for brides. If it's actual silver or gold, they shouldn't wear it by weddings. But from twisted cords, that's allowed, but it shouldn't be too much jewelry, too much gold and silver. Tezayin, another law which arouses from the churban. Anybody who sees the cities of Judah in a state of destruction, he should say the verse which says, Arei Kadshecha Hayu Midbar, your holy cities became a desert, V'Kaireya, and you should tear your clothing. Ra Yerushalayim b'Churbana, if you see Jerusalem in a destroyed state, you should say the verse, Yerushalayim Midbar V'Gaimer, Jerusalem is a desert now. Beis HaMikdash b'Churbana, if you witness the temple in its state of destruction, you should say, Beis Kachenu V'Tifartenu V'Gaimer, our holy house, our beautiful house, is of course now no longer the Kaireya, and you tear your clothing. From where does one have to tear his clothing? When he reaches the place called Sofim. Sofim was a place where you can see the temple from a mountaintop from far away. Today, Jews do this till today. When they come to the Kotel, they tear their clothes. When you reach the temple, you tear another tear. If you're walking the other way and you first come to the temple site, coming from the desert, you first tear your clothing over the temple, and then you tear it more over Jerusalem. Yud Zayin, Kol HaKrayim Ha'elu Kulam Kereya B'Yadai Me'umat. These tears should be made with your hand while you're standing. Kind of like a mourner after someone passes away. B'Kereya Kol Ksus Shalav. Tear all the layers of clothing that's on you. Ad Sheyegale Asliba till you reveal your chest. Be'enei Ma'acha Krayim Elu La'ilam. These tears should never be fully sewn back together. Avorashay Hu L'Shalalan, L'Malalan, L'Lokdan, U'Letafran Kemin Sulamis. But you can have them stitched, or hemmed, or gathered closed, or sewn like a ladder where the stitches are loose one from each other. In other words, you can bring it back together, but don't fully sew it strongly back together. Yudches, Hoya Hoylechu Ba L'Yerushalayim Hoylechu Ba. If you were constantly traveling back and forth into Jerusalem, Toich Shleishim Yayim, within 30 days, Einei Kereya Kera Acher. You don't have to tear another tear if it's within 30 days of your last visit. But if it's after 30 days, then you do go and tear again every 30 days. And the Rambam concludes the laws of fasting with a very comforting statement. Halacha Yutes Kol Hatzoymes Ha'elu Asidim Libotel L'Maisa Mashiach. All of these fasts are going to be cancelled in the days of Mashiach. V'loi oid, and not only that, Ela Shehem Asidim Liyos Yom Tov V'Meisasim B'Simcha. They're going to in the future become a holiday, or Yamim Tovim, some people have the text, and days of gladness and joy.
Including Gedalia?
Including Gedalia, including Tisha B'av, including everything. Rambam has here two levels. Yom Kippur is a different thing. Yom Kippur is not a fast day over a trouble. It's a fast day biblically. So it's a different story. But these fasts are going to turn into holidays. See the two stages? They're going to be canceled, and they're going to turn into holidays. So it's two different levels. You can cancel a fast day, but you don't have to make it into a holiday. So the Rambam says, so the Rebbe explains in a very long sikha that what's the whole point of a fast? Tshuva, right? To get you to tshuva. What does tshuva accomplish? Usually two things. Tshuva cancels your sins, but if you do a very strong tshuva, it can convert the power of the sin into a positive energy. Zdonot yehafchu lezachiyot. So here too, if we do tshuva on one level, when Moshiach comes, the fast will just be canceled. But if we do the major tshuva, which converts the sins into positive energy, it's going to convert the fast day into a holiday. And the Rambam says it in two lines, because the Rebbe says it's going to happen in two stages. In the beginning of Mashiach's coming, it's going to be canceled. Then later on, it's going to turn into a holiday. Shenemar, as it says, Koi Amar Hashem Tzvaris. This is the verse that we saw before. So said God. Tzayim HaRevi, V'tzayim HaChamishi, V'tzayim HaShvi, V'tzayim HaAsiri. All the fast days. The one in the 4th month, the one in the 5th month, the one in the 7th month, the one in the 10th month. Yiyah lebeis Yehuda, lesasin ulesimcha l'mayadim tovim. It's going to become for the house of Judah gladness, joy, and good holidays. And the verse concludes, V'ha'emes v'ha'shalem mehavu. They will love truth and peace. The Rebbe says that's the key. Loving truth and peace is the way to hasten Mashiach's coming, the way to help the tshuva along, the way to help the process go, where we're going to actually be zochet, the merit to turn the fasts into wonderful yamim tovim. Brich Rachamana Desayan, blessed is the merciful and grants us assistance. Mazal Tov for concluding Hilchos Taaniyos, the laws of fasts.
Thank you.